From the Aishin Broadcast Studio, it's the Amped EV Podcast.
Hello and welcome to the Amped EV Podcast. My name is David. I am the editor of The Buzz.
And I'm Jason Morgan, content director for Fleet Equipment. We're back.
And we're back.
I'm amped.
And we're back. Yes, we are equally amped, I think, today.
How many amps is that?
It's over 100.
All right. We're amped to be here.
Yeah, yes, we are.
We'll hit 200 before the end of the show.
We have to at this point.
Yeah, we're amped.
We have a great guest on today.
Yeah.
We are, so you like data?
I do like data.
I like data too.
I do.
Not just the Star Trek version, all types of data.
We like that data too.
I'll talk to you about the Star Trek version later because he's got some good stuff going on there. But we're not here to talk about that. We are here to talk with Charlotte Argus. She is the Senior Manager of Sustainable Mobility at Geotab.
Yeah, we're going to talk battery degradation. Are they really degrading at a rate that we should be concerned about, or is it not so much?
You know, it seems concerning, but I don't know.
We'll see.
Let's find out.
Here we go. Hey, Charlotte, great to see you. Thanks for taking the time. Excited to learn a lot about the battery data you've released here.
Yeah, great. Thanks for having me. Happy to be here.
So I don't want to put any spoilers out there. I'll let you take the limelight here. Give us a quick overview of some of the things you've learned about battery usage in EVs.
Yeah, so the biggest finding that we've learned is that EV batteries are lasting quite well on average. And we were able to assess this because Geotab provides telematics and connected vehicle solutions to fleets around the world. And so as these fleets start bringing on EVs and start integrating them into their operations, this has given us a great opportunity to better understand their performance in real world conditions. So we did a recent study and we analyzed about 5,000 EVs operating in these real world conditions. And we found that EV batteries on average are degrading only about 1.8% per year. So this means that, you know, an EV that starts with 100% state of health, which is, you know, holding 100% of its energy as new, after 10 years, it'll still hold over 80% of its state of health. And if they continue to degrade at the same rates that we're seeing right now, then it means that these batteries should outlast the lifespan of the vehicles themselves. I actually would say another really interesting thing about this latest study is that we did a similar study in 2019. And at that time, we found that the degradation rate was 2.3%. Degradation per year, which wasn't bad at all. I mean, we were pretty impressed with those numbers at the time. But what we're seeing now is that, you know, it went from 2.3 to 1.8%, which tells us that battery technology is improving, battery management systems are likely getting more sophisticated. And this has only been over a very short period of time. So I know early gen EVs, some of them used air-cooled systems. Some of them, you know, weren't as sophisticated in terms of how they were managing the temperature within the battery systems. We're seeing a lot more sophistication now, and that's likely what we're seeing with these improved rates.
Yeah, real quick on that too, as a follow-up on those 5,000 EVs, is there a typical vehicle profile, or are these commercial applications, consumer applications, vehicle size? What was kind of the range within that?
Yeah, so far for this analysis, we've been focusing on the light-duty vehicles because they've been in operation for a lot longer than the larger commercial vehicles. But we aren't looking at general consumer vehicles. We're looking at passenger cars, but in fleet applications. So that could be, you know, government fleets. It could be like, you know, municipal fleets. It could be field services and other kinds. And so, you know, fleet versus individual vehicles might be used in a bit different way. Generally speaking, every fleet's different, but generally speaking, fleet vehicles are used more than personal vehicles. And they're put in, you know, a little bit more harsh, you know, conditions because they're working a lot more frequently. So yeah, this is kind of what we're seeing across the board, and it's not one particular industry, but it's multiple industries.
Very, very interesting. Charlotte, I want to follow up on some of those numbers that you were describing there, because Geotab, you know, in your data, you found that right around 75% you thought of these, you know, light-duty commercial vehicles could possibly be replaced with EVs, with comparable EVs. And so, you know, you're going from that 2.3% to 1.8%. from the last time that you did this study in around 2019, are that 0.5% difference, does that really make a big enough difference? Is that something that we should be really excited about? Can you help us understand the context around that?
Yeah, I would say both degradation rates are minimal. And I would say, the fact that we're seeing it get better means that fleet operators can be more confident than they were. But if we think back, when EVs first came to market, they're new, and the battery is the most expensive component of the vehicle, right? So there was a lot of understandable concern or reserve around, if I'm going to spend more money up front and purchase this vehicle that costs more than, the gas equivalent, how long can I expect it to last in my fleet? Am I going to have to replace the battery after 5 years, or am I going to lose the range that I have to me really quickly, meaning that the vehicle won't be able to do the operations that I expected it to do? And so what we're seeing, and by being able to kind of look at, well, this is what we're actually observing in real world conditions, in real world fleet conditions, 2.3% to 1.8%. It is an improvement, but I wouldn't underemphasize the fact that 2.3% wasn't very high to begin with. I think so the study that you referred to, 75% suitability. So essentially what we are able to do is we're able to look at how fleet vehicles operate today. So we're looking at gas vehicles, their daily usage, and we have what's called an EV suitability assessment. And so what we can do is we essentially simulate if these vehicles were driven with available EVs instead of the existing vehicle, what would that mean in terms of range capability? What would that mean in terms of costs for the fleets? And 75%, this is a study, just to put context, this is a study of 750,000 light duty vehicles over 7 different countries. So this was a massive macro study. Wow. And the study showed that 75% of these vehicles could have been replaced with an EV and meet the range capabilities or the range requirements that they have with the electrics that are available in their region. With that study, when we looked at cost, 41% would actually save the fleet money. So if the way I put it is they're actually losing money by not going electric. The money, the total cost of ownership, or TCO, this is a term that fleet operators use a lot. This looks at kind of the capital cost, so that upfront cost of the vehicle, and then it looks at the operating costs. So, fuel versus electricity costs, as well as maintenance. And what we did with this macro study is we assumed a 7-year lifespan with the vehicles. Okay. Now, if we're seeing 1.8% battery degradation per year, 7 years, these vehicles should be able to last a lot longer than 7 years. So I think that's the more significant piece of this this analysis is that, well, if fleet operators don't have to turn over their vehicles after, say, 7 years, if they can hold on to them for 10 years or even longer, then that means the business case improves for the EV because EVs pay off. The return on investment is the more you use them. And so the longer that they're able to keep their vehicle in their operations, the better the business model and the better the business case. So I would say that would be the main thing. The other component to total cost of ownership is residual value. And so how, the end of a fleet's lifespan might not be the end of the vehicle's lifespan. So fleets often will sell off the vehicles after they turn it over. And, this is an unknown. Our study, we don't know. We can't foresee the future on residual value, especially with EVs. We expect that the better the batteries hold up, the better the residual value. But again, this technology is changing so quickly, we're not sure what the market will look like then. So that's still an unknown.
Presented from the Aishin Broadcast Studio at Babcock's Media.
Yeah, but what I like here, I mean, to your point, you have a measurable data point on the typical degradation of the battery. You're taking away a little bit of the unknown insofar of that total cost of ownership conversation, because, like, look, all fleets will also have their tipping point for when they're going to turn that vehicle, as you've noted here, right? So now it becomes an interesting question of, I'm going to talk about a little bit of heavy duty. And I know that's not the vehicle we're talking about here, but I just off the top of my head know that a heavy duty, you look at 3 to 4 years, and first time fleet buyers are looking to turn the trucks by then, because you start getting the engine maintenance that's going to cost them more than buying a new vehicle, right? At least that was the pre-pandemic kind of feeling there. But now, if you really are getting those 7, 8, 9, 10 years, right? Because we're seeing even commercial vehicle operators offer those service contracts really up to 8 years, some to 10 years. It changes the calculation of what you're able to do and how you put those vehicles in your fleet. Residual value, clearly, as you noted, still a question mark. Interesting to see what happens. But given that fleets can have a little more confidence on the battery degradation side, knowing their batteries will go the distance here, what about operationally? Is there anything in the data you find maybe about how I'm using fast charging, right? That's always the one thing. Am I fast charging? Am I slow charging? Am I doing this or that? Anything related to battery degradation in terms of maybe application usage or even how I charge the vehicle?
Yeah, absolutely. And, averages only tell you so much, right? Every individual vehicle is going to, some vehicles are degrading faster, some are degrading slower. We did want to try to understand how different factors played a role. So different operating conditions played a role in the battery degradation rate. And we have to remember or keep in mind, we're not taking these batteries and putting them in a lab. We're not, controlling for one thing to see, the impact of another. Really what we're looking at is the accessible or usable capacity to the driver and how that changes over time. And, these vehicles are being used in real world operations, as I mentioned. So what we were able to do is almost put the vehicles in cohorts under different conditions that are similar. So some of the known factors that impact degradation, one is exposure to heat, one is exposure to high voltage or high power. The other one is high usage, so battery cycles. Now, for the high usage, we haven't seen, at least from the data that we've looked at, we haven't seen an impact on those vehicles that were under high use scenarios versus low use scenarios, as long as we controlled for DC fast charging. But with DC fast charging, we did see for the cohorts that used more frequent or had more frequent use of DC fast charging compared to others, those batteries did degrade faster. And it was actually the combination of high frequency fast charging and exposure to hot climates. That was really the two combination where we saw the biggest impact. I would say from, a practicality perspective, what does that mean for a fleet operator? Does that mean that they shouldn't operate their vehicle in the summer? Does that mean that they should never use fast charging? No, I don't think that's what this suggests. But what I would say for for a fleet operator who's thinking about, is there anything that I can do to, preserve my vehicles as best as I can without making so many concessions that it's going to impact my operations? I would say with fast charging, there's kind of a natural tendency for us as humans, I think, honestly, but just, the faster the better. I want to get the megawatt chargers or the fastest power DC chargers available to me today. If we think about, preserving or protecting the EV batteries, as well as protecting the wallet, like the bottom line for the fleet, in many cases, a slower charger is actually better. So if we think about the true operations of how vehicles are being used and deployed and dispatched in fleets, there are certain industries where, there's some vehicles that are operating 24/7 or have high operations where they simply don't have the opportunity to sit around and charge. But the majority of vehicles in fleets today, if you look at the 24-hour period, they're parked or dwelled for 10 or 12 hours in a day. And so that gives the opportunity, if a fleet operator were to plan their charging, they can get away with lower power charging that still fulfills the needs of the fleets, that just takes advantage of that natural dwell time. And then in that case, it's also better or a benefit to protect the longevity of the battery itself. And not to mention, it's generally less expensive to put in lower power chargers compared to high power fast chargers. So I think there's an opportunity for a win-win-win here when it comes to charging strategy and fitting the power needs with the actual operations and the duty cycle of the vehicles.
Now, I want to go back to something that you had alluded to earlier, which is, if I'm a fleet owner and I'm not intimately familiar with EVs and I don't have a lot of EVs in my fleet, I'm going to just naturally be worried about, what's that battery health going to look like down the line? What's the performance going to look like down the line after I've had these vehicles 2, 3, 4 years? But I think when we look at all of the data that Geotab has collected and able to do studies like this, if it teaches us anything, it's that more data, more telematics is allowing us to kind of, peek behind the curtain a little bit and get a better understanding of what is important as far as what's going to be important for that fleet owner to understand, to see where their battery life is going to be and their performance is going to be. So what sorts of data points do these fleet owners need to be, have a good eye on, I suppose, in order to kind of rest easy?
Yeah, no, I think you hit the nail on the head. Part of the reason why Geotab puts out these kind of macro analyses is really to kind of tackle some of that fear of the unknown and those misconceptions that are out there with a new technology. And so by being able to kind of look at, well, here's what we've seen, here's the real world data that we've seen in terms of battery performance and vehicle performance, that helps just as an industry kind of build confidence around the technology to make individual decision making easier. But when it comes to, the practical operations from a fleet perspective, again, averages, they only tell you so much. It really comes down to their individual vehicles and how are they going to use that data to their benefit. And so for a fleet operator, they're going to want to understand what is the current both state of charge of my vehicle at any given time, but also being able to flag for the vehicles that are in their fleet, are any of my vehicles degrading faster than expected, for example. And so we've created a EV battery health report, for example, for our fleet customers, where they can look at the EVs in their operations and flag any that are performing, worse than expected. And with EV batteries and any lithium-ion batteries, some degradation is going to happen. Like even if a battery is not used, you're going to have some amount of battery degradation over time. But what this, by kind of pairing or matching, this is what is expected from, the averages or the macro data, and then this is what I'm seeing on my individual vehicle. That's the opportunity that they can flag things before it becomes too much of an issue. And it's not just about data points around the battery health. It's also about the day-to-day range, so the day-to-day efficiency of their vehicles. And we know things like temperature or vehicle speed or topography, this all impacts how far the vehicle can go on a single charge. And this isn't to do with long-term battery health. This is just to do with, that trip's efficiency. And so, in the winter, the driver probably has the heat cranked up, and that's taking some of the energy that can't be used now for driving a distance. And so this is another kind of set of data points that is really helpful for a fleet operator, is getting, predicted range remaining, understanding, under the operating conditions of my vehicle today, what should I expect in terms of my range capability. And then this can be used for things like dispatching or identifying, which vehicle needs to charge. So doing charge queuing or charge management as well.
Very good. Charlotte, thanks for taking the time. Really great to talk about the real world data that's out there in EV usage. I'm sure we'll talk to you again real soon as you gather even more data and find even more insights.
Yeah, looking forward to it. Thanks a lot.
All right.
All right.
I learned a lot. What'd you learn?
Yeah, well, first of all, again, I do like to go back to it. This was real world data. EVs actually being used. We have answers now. David, answers to questions that we've been asking for years. We have actual concrete, hardcore answers.
Look, people are so worried, I mean, legitimately, and they should be, about is the battery going to last the life of the vehicle? If I'm a fleet owner and I'm purchasing all of these vehicles, I don't want to throw my investment in the toilet, you know? And so this is very, very important data for people to know and understand. And you know, we're looking at thousands and thousands and thousands of EVs on the road and all these different data points that is telling us this 1.8% per year degradation. And I think that, I don't know, I think that would be acceptable to me as a fleet owner.
Right, well, and going back to it too, I think the 41% that could be transitioned from ICE to EV and you would make money doing it, I think that is one of the keys for me. Because look, regardless of what's happening in the regulatory landscape, we've just entered a new year, there's gonna be a new administration, up is down, left is right, no one knows where this is going, but what is true is that if it makes a fleet money, it's probably worth looking at. If it's going to make your fleet money, then you should really check it out because these are vehicles performing very specific functions and applications, being used for commercial applications. It's all about the dollars and cents. If that works out with some napkin math, then you're good to go.
And you know what, I think you're right, but napkin math, you might want to go a bit beyond that. And I think that's why, folks like Geotab have these suitability assessments where you can go in, you can plug in all of your numbers in there, and you can talk to the folks, at Geotab or whoever you're working with, and make sure that, hey, this is going to actually make sense down the road, a couple of years down the road, and I'm not crazy for, flipping the script, getting rid of my ICE vehicles, or maybe just adding in these EVs that, I've never had experience with. And I think that's really important.
Yeah, and that's probably a better way to do it. So everyone should do it that way. Not my way, but do it that way.
Start with the napkin.
Very good. Yeah, you can start with the napkin. I always
absolutely.
do. All right, very good. Well, hey, very good.
Thank you for joining me here. This was fantastic. And thank you for joining us. We'll catch you next time.